Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to Wednesday and Social Studies. So, you've seen the end of the movie. You've seen the end of History of the World, and I hope you've enjoyed the movie. Miss Richards and I really wish we could be in the classroom with you and discussing these things and having debates and conversation. And I'm sure you are with your crew teachers. It's just that we wish we could be a part of that as well. So many things are brought up in this movie, and so many different perspectives are talked about in this movie that I wish we could hear your ideas and interpretations. But maybe another year, maybe another time, maybe later this year, who knows? So, you have a quiz coming up tomorrow. And so you need to be ready for the quiz. And we've told you that the way to study for the quiz is to use all of the pages from your study guide. And that will get you through to the quiz. Also, today we will have time to study, so that will help out. And then Thursday we'll take the quiz. So let's go ahead and get started by correcting your work from yesterday. You watched the end of the movie and then you finished the back side of this page. Today we'll correct that work. Please have your papers out and some kind of a correcting tool for your papers. Okay, thanks for being ready and thanks for sitting up and paying attention to this so we can get through this and have a little more education on the part that's really interesting. We've done a lot of science, like we said, up until this point, and that was important because the science, the way the earth was formed and the sun and those kinds of things play a part about humans, the ice age, those kinds of things. But now we're into how humans live and interact and work, which is pretty cool for the social studies end of it. Okay, so refer to the World Jew histogram. Well, this was kind of tough because you don't have one on your desk, but I have fantastic news. We are getting some desk geohistograms for you guys, and we're going to be able to use them hopefully next week to be able to study and analyze the geohistogram better. So Miss Richards and I are super excited about that. We want you to understand the geohistogram and see it for the interesting piece that it really is. In the meantime, you are asked to solve these. I said don't make a big fuss of it because this will not be on this quiz. You'll have a separate quiz just with the geohistogram. And you don't have one in front of you, so you had to use this one. And let's just be honest, that scrolling up and down is not easy. It's really hard to take in the whole idea of the geohistogram when you're scrolling. But having said that, let's quickly go over these just for a sense of reference and a little bit of refresher on learning the time part of it and the region part of it. So this, we'll go back here real quick. Remember the regions are at the top: Americas, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Central and South Asia, East Asia, Oceania, from west to east, just like we saw the map right here, just like the map. From, not that you can't put maps in other positions, certainly you can, but when we put a world map in this position, we can see it follows just like that, with the Americas moving to Europe and Africa, Middle East, Asia's, and so forth, Oceania. So then we also have time coming down here, and this is the 0 mark, and Common Era, which is also known as AD, and before Common Era, which is known as BC. So that gets confusing. I'll write it on the geohistogram so you can remember both ways, but the way we do it now, people still use AD and BC, and people use CE and BCE. So you just have to start memorizing those two different labels. So the question says 500 BC, which is the same as 500 BCE, the blank empire covers 1.2 million square miles. We're not going to worry about the measurements of the miles, okay? Let's just take a look at that time frame of 500 BC or BCE. So we go down here, and you're going to say, well, I don't see 500 on this. No, you don't. That's true. But you've worked in math, and you've worked with graphs before, and you've worked with timelines. So you can assume some things. We can see that starting down here it goes 7,000, 6,000, 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000. It's not because it's less years, it's because it is closer to 0. So we're going closer to 0, and this is further away from 0. So there's still 1,000 years and 1,000 years and 1,000 years in between every line. And they put the waves in here, and these get small, and they put the waves to denote that thousands of years are passing, but they don't need to take up this much space to show that barely anything changes. So they just go like that much space. Not much is changing here. So they don't need much space to show you that. Back to our problem, 500 BCE or 500 BC. If we go from 2000 to 1000 here, what would you assume we're going from here? 1000 to, we've said 0. In that case, what is half of 1,000? It's 500. So if we go to 500 and we go across, we can see that we are in this range here. And what they were looking for on that answer is actually Persia, because they're showing that distance right here. And so if you had Greece, I could understand why, but Persia was the answer that they were looking for in this particular question. And remember that how wide the empire or civilization is indicates how much land it takes up. And then how long it is indicates how long it was in control or power. So Persia was in power for quite some time, not as long as others, but also had a lot of area that it controlled. So this first answer right here, this first answer right here is Persia. So we can just indicate that. If you don't have it, you can just write it in just as a piece of information. This will not be on your quiz tomorrow. And then it says in 323 BC, Alexander's empire spans 2 million miles. The clue there would have been Alexander, and that is Greece in this region. When Alexander goes on his crusades and he heads out, this is about that time period in the 300s, getting closer to 0. So we see 2000 to 1000 to 500 to 300, 200, 0. And so that would be Greece for that one right there. And they tell you that. And then 500 BC, Han Chinese Empire reaches millions of square miles. And that is over here. We're very close to 0. And that is right here. And you can see that's their widest part right there. They're doing well there. Okay, so the next one asks 117 AD, otherwise known as CE, what empire maxes out at where one is it the largest? And for that one, oops, I gotta move that over there. Okay, for that one, they're talking about Rome. This is right when it's at the height of its power, and they have a lot of control, and they're in 3 different regions. We're going to talk about all 3 of those civilizations and empires later this year, so you can look forward to that. It's pretty interesting, and we noticed that Greece did conquer Persia. What does that mean for humans and our civilizations moving forward from that? So then it says 2,000 years before present. Trade of products and culture explodes at a level not seen before, utilizing the Silk. And this should say roads. The Silk Roads. Okay, there was more than one. We'll study the Silk Roads. We'll see how many different ones there were, how many branches, depending on what they were carrying and the weather and certain things. So Silk Roads, and we're seeing that this culture is exploding. Boys and girls, people were bringing not just their ideas, but their culture and their way of life when they came and they traded with other people. We remember the Himalayan mountains were blocking Europe from Asia, China, and so people didn't even know that they existed on the other side. And once they sent those people over and they did some exploring and they found that, things just went crazy. The time frames on that were about 100 BC to 200 AD, which is the same as 100 BCE to 200 CE. So there's an explosion there of trade and goods getting traded across those 2 areas on the Silk Road. Well, we've seen before, we know before, and this is one documented time, that trade doesn't just bring ideas and goods, it also brings disease. And disease spreads, bringing down dynasties. It's a theory that the Han Dynasty collapsed because of the diseases that they shared with Europe. So the Chinese had their own diseases, but they had built up immunities. Europeans had their own diseases, but built up immunities. But when they crossed and came together, they wiped each other out, and unknowingly, they didn't have the technology to know about bacteria and viruses and so forth. So they were spreading that without even knowing it. Fleas, other rats, things like that. We'll talk more about that later. And we see this happen again later on, of course, with Christopher Columbus. And let's see what else we want to make sure that we talk about in this section. Okay. So now we're going down to the key to Arab trade is the camel, because it could carry twice as much cargo as the donkey in half the time. Poor donkey's out. Donkey's out, can't keep up, too small, too weak, but the camel's in. And so the camel is carrying these large loads. You saw that in the video, and you saw that they are able to go across the desert, which of course, I mean, a donkey's going to need more water than that. A camel can survive in that environment. Also, camels have special eyes, special hooves, and they're able to battle the sand, the cold, the heat. They're pretty extraordinary animals. So the camel takes over as a key to trade. This is also when religion sparks up, and we will talk about the 5 main world religions later in the year, and we're just going to give an overview of those and share some of their beliefs. So that's when that is starting as well. So lots going on in this time period, lots and lots of stuff, and things are spreading more because they're trading more. So ideas about religion and people and ways of life are spreading. Okay, now we're down to 500 years before present in 1492. And we know that song, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And it says the world is divided into two, the Americas and Europe. Columbus gets the King and Queen of Spain to fund his expedition. To make the trip, Columbus is using several innovations. Okay, where do you think Columbus get these innovations from? Through trade, right? Columbus is getting his stuff through trade. So we know that, let's see. Oh, first of all, we want to remember that Columbus was an Italian born, but he was able to get the King and Queen of Spain to finance his trip. He sold them on the idea that he could cross the ocean and find goods and riches and things like that. And so from the, do you guys remember this one? From the Arabs, Columbus uses triangular sails from, oh no, I read that wrong. From the Arabs, Columbus uses triangular sails. And from China, Columbus uses the compass. Okay, he is not going to be able to make that trip across the Atlantic without these two. Let me just close this for a sec here. Okay, so Columbus goes from here and across. Oops, down here. I should probably erase that because it's a faulty image. But he goes from Europe to about this area, and you've seen that before. You saw it on the video in the book, or in the movie. But we want to make sure that you realize that he crosses an entire ocean. This is when they still thought, of course, that the earth might not be round. This is when they thought that there were monsters in the sea. This is when they just didn't know, would you be able to make it? Not to mention, boys and girls, not to mention, were you in Muskegon a couple years ago when they actually had the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria replicas in Muskegon? Did you guys see those ships? They were insanely small. Insanely small. I would not cross Lake Michigan in those things. No engine, a sail, wooden, teeny tiny, had to sleep on deck because the supplies were down below. Not for me. Not crossing an unknown ocean. So it took definitely some guts. Now, of course, Columbus wanted the notoriety and he wanted it to be famous. So he had motivation behind it. But that was also a pretty risky adventure. And he could only have done it because of the advancements that he got with the Arabs in China, and that he got that information. Not that they were just the advancements available, but that he had them because of trade and connections and those kinds of things. Also, boys and girls, it's been 15,000 years since there's been any connection. So 15,000 years prior, there's humans walking across the Bering Straits and coming down this way. And since then, no interaction. The water levels have risen back up because the ice has melted. And now this is the first connection in that many years. And that is a changing, a world altering event for humans. When Columbus makes that connection between those two pieces of land, it changes how humans interact. It changes the way we do things. It changes the way we eat food. It talks in there what about sugars and how we can now have let's see, our calories, more calories available. The population doubles because there's more food. We have these things because of the connection. Many other things, of course, ideas, resources. We also have something else. In the years following Columbus, 95% of the Native Americans die off. First of all, it was the same thing as when China came to Europe. There's a spread of disease, not good. But then we also know that Europeans brought warfare and guns and violence, which killed off Native Americans as well. So, some good and bad coming out of that. But definitely, no matter, you have to acknowledge that Columbus certainly had one of the most important events for humans in our history, that connection between those two pieces of land. Okay, 300 years before present, most humans live simple lives as farmers. Man hit a wall and progress is at a standstill because human muscle has reached its limit. Humans can't simply work as hard as they need. They need more power, they need more endurance. So, what's the answer? Cool is the answer. Oh, look at that. Oh boy. Okay, undo. This is how my technology goes. Okay, well, I did undo. Whew, got it back. Yeah, you can see how I struggle sometimes with technology. Anyways, I have my fancy marker here again, too. So 300 years before present, back to this. Most humans live as farmers. It works. So in some ways, there wasn't a huge reason to change, but humans, we desire change. We desire things to be different over time. People want inventions. People want more power. People want things to be different. And so coal is the answer, leading to the Industrial Revolution, forever transforming the world. Okay, we saw that in the video. It's crazy how coal and oil and those things are able to fuel the world and to change the way humans live forever. Now we're moving to the 20th century. By the 20th century, fossil fuels and the internal combustion engine have amplified everything, including warfare. I don't know why humans feel the need to do that, but there's been war forever. So, in the beginning of documented times, before documented times, in prehistory, we can find things about war. So, and arguments. So, humans have been doing that, and now we have fossil fuels to power that. Almost 3 times as many people were killed in war in the 20th century than the previous 2,000 years combined. Did you slow down to think about that sentence? That's a crazy thought and a crazy sentence. Wish we could be better than that as humans. A lot of great things humans do, but it could be nice if we could be a little bit better than that. Okay, so we've completed every single worksheet. We've watched the movie. We've had some one-ended conversations with me talking to you. I hope your teachers have had some conversations with you. You've asked some questions. I know you have because my crew class has asked lots of great questions. They've been curious about tons of things, and so I'm sure you guys have been too. And so right now, what's going to happen is your crew teacher will allow you to study for a bit of time. He or she will set that time frame. So you can, as ways to study, you can make flashcards on Quizlet. You can make physical flashcards with paper. You could just simply go through the sheets with a neighbor and quiz each other. And then in maybe 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how much time you have left in class, the teacher will leave about 20 or so minutes to do a Kahoot. The Kahoot will reflect the quiz pretty closely. So if you go through the Kahoot and you have most of it right and you just have to jot down a few notes to study a little bit more on a couple questions, you'll be in pretty good shape for tomorrow. If you don't know the Kahoot, then you definitely need to be studying tonight from this sheet. If you know most, then just review the sheet a little bit or concentrate on the areas that you don't know. And then that will end for today. That'll end today's lesson. And then on Thursday, we'll start right away. You'll begin the class by studying You'll study for a few moments, however way you want to, if you made some Quizlet cards or if you made your own flashcards, or if you have your papers, and then you'll take the quiz on Kia. Actually, we'll show you how to use Kia, and then that'll be your day on Thursday. So if you have any questions, reach out to me or Miss Richards. We're here to help you. We're here to get you set for the quiz. We want you to do well. You did well on the last quiz, so I think you can do just the same on this one. As a matter of fact, I know you can. So study hard, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great Wednesday.